Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show has been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com. Today you join me for the 14th instalment of the Creative Conditions Creativity Diary, where I dump my unrefined thoughts, musings, fears, hopes and dreams right on you, and I hope you engage with them, and I love that discourse. This is the Creative Condition podcast. Hello, how are you doing, guys? Are you well? I'm Ben Talon, your host of the Creative Condition, founder of the Creative Condition at large, my broader, ongoing, lifelong exploration of human creativity. I coach, I write, I explore, I muse, I think, and this is the part of the show, the podcast now being 10 years old, where I dump my diary entries on you in audio format, and I would love it if you engage with some of the themes and come back and tell me your thoughts about certain topics, whether you agree, disagree, find them funny. It's always valuable. I love to chat to you guys, so please do that. Don't be shy. Let's get into it. We'll kick off with Get Lost, which is 2nd of June 2025. I was 26 when I visited Istanbul. Me and a friend, no Roman internet collection, just passports, little folders stuffed with printed maps and handwritten directions that would hopefully enable us to reach our hostel. These travels, before the age when I began to feel like I could trust my sense of self, were thrilling. This was, in part, down to the adrenaline brought on by the chaos of it all. The last days of relying on our heads and pre-planning, our noses, senses and guts. I enjoy the convenience of today's transformed landscape of connectivity, but what we're losing by always knowing where we are. In Istanbul, we walked into a mucky little bar and were sucked straight into the magnetic field of King Barfly. He was Irish, tight jeans, straggly, shoulder-length hair, and his aura roared, crackling and spitting deep orange embers. "Hiya, mate," opened my friend. "Boys," he chortled, getting off his tall stool, flicking his hair back over his shoulder as he pulled each of us in for a hug we didn't feel we deserved, we earned. Having just met him for the first time. And we were his for the next half an hour and 2 beers, basking in his tales of misadventure. He lived there, so we asked him what we should be doing while we were in the city. "Get lost," he said it several times, and assured us that if we wanted to experience Istanbul properly, we should stop trying to plot and plunge arse first into its vibrancy and mystique. All those humming side streets and spellbinding bazaars. This wasn't travel advice, it was wisdom, and so much better than TripAdvisor. I tried to ensure that despite my role as a father of 2 5-year-olds and a busy business owner, I carve out time for new experiences, crowbar in little jeopardy and adventure. I seek the sense of being lost, even if I have to engineer it. I push my coaching clients to do this. Most of them, in some way, have settled for something that could be challenged, redirected for personal illumination and tiny thrills. Last weekend, a fellow father described how he recognised his son, a teenage victim of the COVID-19 lockdowns, had no way of wayfinding skills. So he would take him places a few postcodes away and let him walk back. After a series of phone calls to his dad, mildly distressed, describing the strange places he found himself, he managed to get back on track, steadily rebuilding a crucial component of independence. We're connected all the time, and if we let ourselves, we'll never be lost again. And that is an ugly purple bruise on our curiosity, our ability to be truly present, the way we were in that bar in Istanbul. How can we truly appreciate what we have? we never mislay it, with the real threat of never having it again. And it needn't be overseas, or even beyond our own postcode. Change is accessible at all times, but we forget that. Go out and look for it. Get lost. 9th of June 2025. Doctor, patient, creative. There have been times my fierce commitment to roaming far and wide to inform my understanding of creativity has wavered. It felt risky to write books, interview and run music companies when my job title said illustrator. As soon as people tried to bracket my podcast as an illustration podcast, after the first episode with Danny Allison, I piled it full of guests from far beyond one form of visual communication. Episode 2 was a conversation from a chance encounter with then New York University's Professor of Theatre, Rebecca Johansson. And not out of any petty rebellion. I've simply always followed my curiosity, even when logic screamed otherwise. From the outset, I was in the service of creativity. If you want to be truly creative, drawing only from the reservoir of existing industry material is counterproductive. Any narrowing of this kind has, in part, made things easier for AI. So the need for different thinking today is an emergency. That's what I'm helping individuals and agencies with through the creative condition and my coaching work. Before my conversation with HIV and sexual health consultant Rageshree Deriawan about deep listening on episode 259 of the podcast, I read both her book, Unheard, The Medical Practice of Silencing, and A Fortunate Woman, as referenced in Rageshree's work. Rageshree's experiences of being unheard in healthcare, despite her work within it, taught me so much about the need to truly listen to people, to respect them and rise above our conscious and unconscious biases. And very quickly, I joined the dots between the issues in healthcare detailed by Rageshree and the creative industry. I'd like to share with you an excerpt from A Fortunate Woman, a stunning piece of work by Penny Mordaunt. Consider this in terms of the asphyxiating effect of data, protocol, liability and risk aversion on creativity, storytelling, play and joy. You all know what I mean. The rise of evidence-based medicine over her time in the practice has seen remarkable strides in the treatment of disease and improved medical outcomes beyond recognition. It was certainly transformative in the early days for the young doctor to anchor her clinical decisions within an established framework of best practice informed by the latest science. But what has proved more difficult to measure in terms of its efficacy is the value of the doctor-patient relationship within it. Because this is so hard to quantify and cold hard figures, performance metrics inevitably skew towards incentivizing outcomes that are easier to define in statistical terms and a population rather than a personal level. While not a bad thing in and of itself, this culture shift towards standardized interventions for common medical conditions has created a cascade of unintended consequences within primary care, many of which have eroded that doctor-patient relationship upon which it was built. Workloads have increased, practices and their teams have gotten larger. The role of technology has expanded. Part-time working has become the norm. A portion of the press routinely use the issue of part-time working as a stick with which to beat the rising number of female GPs. But in reality, if the doctors of either gender, part-time working is the only way to endure the pressures of the job. All the while, the wholesale management of risk, according to the standardised guidelines, trumps the judgment of individual doctors. Thus, by increments, the axis has tilted from an emphasis on the patient to an emphasis on disease, from interaction to transaction. Moreover, as patient numbers have risen, access to a doctor, any doctor, has become the overriding priority, and individual relationships find themselves pushed to the margins of care. Remains much talked of, but it's far less often achieved. And because it's so tricky to measure, it doesn't feature in the framework of payment incentives for general practitioners. Let's welcome this massive potential that technology continues to offer creativity, but more caution about how much humanity we surrender to it is sorely needed. Those who thrive in the era of automation will be the ones who lead with authenticity, personality and lived experience, not those who demand cheaper silver bullets. 11th of June 2025, even just one other. I got overwhelmed again. You might know the feeling, that weight of everything you're trying to carry crashing down to the point where even replying to a message feels insurmountable. We're all carrying varying degrees of too much, at least most of the time. I can't even be sure what triggered it this time. Something I read about blackbird sickness, or Amazon preparing humanoid deliveries, maybe. Then into intense days loaded with illustration projects, coaching sessions, writing, interviewing, and then, with piss-bag eyes, reeling mind, every concern, mundane task, family duty, and Ben Talon's life plot hole is sucked into the panic vortex. Not uncommon for these sensitive artist minds, and more frequent in parenthood. I'm back in control of my stupid brain by the time I arrive at London Euston, heading north to do some coaching work. The place is teeming with people pulling little suitcases and also on phones, trundling around the human obstacle course without looking up. I find a wall to sit against, under a staircase to the right of the lobby, before sliding down it dramatically with a full-on old man groan. Then I see another bloke sitting against the opposing wall, legs stuck out, paperback in hand. His presence triggers a rush of loveliness in my belly, so I sit with the joy for a minute or so. The little pocket of quiet, so close to the noise, yet gorgeously separate, is perfect. Before he looks up to see me grinning lazily in his direction, I mirror his choice of time passing and pull out my paperback. As a kid, hauled into compulsory school church services, I'd sit staring up into the upper echelons, imagining what it'd be like to camp up there under those ornate arches by candlelight. The notion of how cosy that would be was enough to help me through the endless warblings and hymns. I glance up every so often to see if it's still just us two. It is, for a while. Then he's disappeared, and the space is immediately far less welcoming. A burst of basic human connection. Since the pandemic, it's taken time. I remember speaking to Manchester creative industry friends, asking how the vibrant event scene was, only to be told it hadn't really gotten going since COVID. I believe there are signs of life now, but some of those online habits stuck, and it tends to be tough on our creativity because that basic human connection is essential. I've been partying with loose change to surprise my kids with new Pokemon cards from the market toy stall, anticipating the day when I can take them to New Realities Gaming, a seductive little nerd hall up by my local train station. Any form of tribe will do. It's not lost on me that I'd have missed that moment of unexpected comfort after a personal crash had I reached for that attention vampire in my pocket. I did, eventually, to reply to my wife, taking the opportune moment, but I shoved it back into my jeans the second the message delivered, then watched people a bit longer. 12th of June 2025, the piano and the Mint Viscount Man. Continuing this week's Reclaim the Throne mini-campaign to take back those moments of opportunity to rest, write, read, make, ponder, plan, etc. From Big Tech, I had two beauties in Manchester Piccadilly Station. I felt happily fried after an intense 4-hour pit-stop coaching session and heard communal piano music. I walked over and drank it all in for a minute or so. This guy played and sang, but what really wove magic was his sway, his body language, full of abandon as he rode from side to side, up and down, snapping his head this way and that, as his flow state transported him somewhere far away from here, somewhere inside him, and everywhere at once. Then, in less epic fashion, the man at the gate to platform 10 didn't just scan my e-ticket, but smiled, arched around the gate, and pointed at the idling train. "That's your train there." His thick Manc accent, full of something close to affection, caressed me with as much pride as the way my nan used to curate and unveil a plate of diabolical filth. Mint Viscount, Gold Bar, Penguin biscuits, and somehow it landed the same way. If I had to pick him out of a lineup now, I couldn't. It was about the moment, the intent, not the man. I'll remember the way he made me feel. The old man would have stayed on his phone. The old me would have stayed on his phone without knowing why, missing that feeling altogether, that observation. And it all looped back to something my client and I discussed. We spoke of the challenge of being sensitive in a crazed, snarling, changing world. We both, once upon a time, wanted to change the world alone, warriors overlooking the need for our tribes. But now, a little older, we reflected on the cult of individualism, how it can throttle progress and creativity's potential. In design, like many industries and organisations, we default to celebrating individuals as change makers. But let's face it, creativity is a communal condition. No matter how big a role one person has, ultimately it's nourished and made possible by many. In a culture that celebrates creativity in its broadest sense, we all win and don't need an award to hoist. I'd like to know more about the man on the piano, the member of staff who rose above his job description with no need for a gold star. But these were more important than singular moments. These were a part of something bigger, and I'm happier and more inspired having looked up to notice them. Reclaim the throne. 13th of June 2025. Such a nice, mild-mannered bot. Here's a sample of what goes on in a very short space of time in my highly sensitive artist brain when I consider AI. It's exhausting and takes constant management, but manage it I must. Robot dogs roam the streets, tracking down and eliminating anyone going against whatever elite doctrine is cooked up and served without our input. AI doesn't really get going because of the major climate event it tips us into, and chaos, in my mind preferable to the previous dystopian imagining, ensues. Species begin to thrive again because we're able to make revolutionary clean energy breakthroughs, and we find a tender balance with mistakes and jeopardy along the way between the gains of advanced technology and human needs. This vision is restricted to particularly optimistic days. Those who cannot hold tight enough to keep up with the speed of societal, technological and economic shifts form an unprecedented extremity of underclass, worse than the Victorian era. But in it, we find a consolatory community we'd almost forgotten might be possible. We're all bald in jelly tanks, the Matrix style. And I never really settle on any satisfying conclusion, other than the certainty that I need to push myself, the human artist, the creativity coach, the thinker, to maximum levels of inner authority, bravery and belief in why I'm doing this. Whilst trying to work out how to enlist the help of a few AI tools, if just not to completely fall behind. But that takes time, and this revolution isn't waiting around. I walked into London Waterloo Station to be confronted by a gigantic advert for Ray-Ban and Meta AI translation glasses. If I still worked in Blockbuster Video, we'd be relocating Minority Report to historical fiction. I hope this provides a little glimpse of the need to take people along for the ride from a mental health and purpose point of view. The sheer intensity of this revolution we're in, without any form of consultation with the population, is incomprehensible. I shared some of these thoughts with a good friend of mine who runs the media department in a school. He started to speed up his workflow on the admin side of things, and he's always had one eye on the underground bunker. He said to me, "Tell you what though, mate, whenever I interact with these chatbots, I always say please and thank you, just in case." There you have it, guys, a deep one this week. When is it not, but especially so. Thank you for listening. Do check out thecreativecondition.com. You can read and listen to the diary over there. You can read my longer form articles, which I do need to update at the moment. You can also get in touch if you fancy some one-to-one or some agency coaching. I can come in and help you with your creativity, whether that's structuring it, working out your why, your personal brand, just getting you realigned with where you need to be, finding your cause, your humanity, your story, maximising your lived experience and your personality. Let me know. I really love doing it. I can do it through the pit stop one-to-one session or a longer-term coaching plan. I am flexible with payment plans to make it work for freelancers, so if it's of any interest whatsoever, drop us a note on the form over at thecreativecondition.com/coach. I'll get back to you. We'll arrange a nice little coffee over a Zoom call. We'll talk it through. If there's nothing going, that's fine. It happens. It's not for everyone. But if there is, we can have a chat, work something out. Cheers, guys. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com, for their global range of illustration and animation portfolios. They've been here since day one. 10 years of the Creative Condition podcast. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. Do tell a friend. And if you get a chance, please do rate, review, or subscribe on the platform you choose to listen. Have a lovely week. Cheers, guys. Take care.